Good evening. My name is Destiny Cabrera, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this leadership book critique. Throughout this course, I have been able to examine myself as a leader and study the various methods and approaches to leadership and why they work. I have gained new perspective on my personal skills and abilities and found the areas that I can build on to become a more versatile leader for my future endeavors. The leadership book I chose was First Break All the Rules by Jim Harter. This was a re-release of the original book from 1999, so included even more information and analysis when it was released in 2016. Aside from including some revolutionary leadership approaches, it also includes multiple appendices that have information about their analysis, surveys, and results, which I added onto this slide for visualization. You can see Appendix B informs the reader of answers from great managers of pretty unique and complicated questions. Appendix D breaks down how Gallup Press, the publisher for this text, categorized the different aspects of organizations to dive into based on their importance to the employees. I personally appreciated the information displayed on these appendixes and the book overall. As aforementioned, I chose First Break All the Rules, mainly because it immediately pushed the envelope. It offered real results from real organizations that were extremely successful with great managers. It got into depth as to why it worked. It was the unconventional approach that these leaders took that caught my attention. The intention of this book was to highlight the way to capitalize on your own style by showing you how to incorporate the revolutionary insights shared by great managers. The managers covered in this textbook are all ones that consistently disregarded the golden rule. The scope of this book begins with the employees and starts by asking, what do the most talented employees need from their workplace? The answer across the board is that talented employees need great managers, which then turns the question onto the managers and their own approach. How do the world's greatest managers find, focus, and keep talented employees? This book does a deep analysis of these questions to give its readers the most insightful answers that it can. For starters, I hope to get a pretty thorough answer to the question of what talented employees specifically needed from great managers and what managers did to find and keep talented employees on their team. I also hope to gain insight on new and evolving leadership approaches and theories and how they were effectively implemented into these different organizations. This book addressed my questions and went above my expectations, and I am excited to give my critique on it in this presentation. When discussing the author's thesis, the most important point that was made pretty early on was specifically what makes these leaders revolutionary. In order to reach this level of leadership, it requires managers to have discipline, focus, trust, and perhaps most importantly, a willingness to individualize. Right off the bat, this textbook mentions the overwhelming amount of books written on leadership, success stories, and how-tos by leaders. However, not many books include quantitative research, nor do they have virtually any standard of measurement. There has yet to be a book that interviewed the best managers in the world and then compared their answers to average leaders to gain real insight, until now. This textbook aimed to give that insight to its readers and to break it down to its foundation to give real advice on how to achieve this greatness. The key concepts in this textbook get categorized into keys that the managers have in order to unlock this level of success. The four main keys are broken down into making sure managers select for talent, ensuring they define the right outcomes to their employees, having managers focus on strengths rather than trying to fix weaknesses, and finally, only keeping the right fit for the roles. After experience and finding what works for you, utilizing these keys are the answer to being a great leader. These keys were found on the results of a combination method that includes focus groups, factor analysis, regression analysis, concurrent validity studies, and follow-up interviews. Through these methods, the goal was to try to pry apart strong workplaces to reveal the core elements that then could be shared with other organizations and other leaders. The results and findings of this methodology is the four keys. When selecting for talent, it is important to note that the best manager can spot a glimpse of talent in someone and reposition them to play into that talent more. Experience, willpower, knowledge, all of that is important for an employee to have. But talent is the single factor that could have someone stand out and be the reason an employee excels or fails. When managing a diverse team, the difficulty strikes when you must retain control and focus people on performance, but everyone does not perform in the same manner. Defining the right outcomes and letting each team member get there on their own allows for individualization of each person's path while clearly stating the end goal across the board. One person's path of least resistance is going to be different from somebody else's. Working closely with your team on a one-on-one basis allows for understanding of who they are as people, which leads to the ability to focus on their strengths. Let them become more of who they already are. It will lead you to getting employees who will thrive in their natural talents. Finally, once you know your team inside and out and have clear outcomes for their roles, spending time to keep the right fit in the right role will be the natural next step. Ensuring you weigh the demands of the role and the talent of your employee will help you make the best decision for that particular role. Based on all the information I have learned from this course, along with the context of this book, I am confident in saying that this sort of leadership approach holds true to being successful. I will make some connections in the next few slides, but the overarching approach taken by the managers in this textbook is a trend of leadership organizations that are currently heading for. A lot of the same things in this textbook is very aligned with a lot of the articles and a lot of the information we have read in class, and I make a lot of those connections moving forward. So what values are evident in his or her analysis of the evidence? What biases are evident? For starters, ethical leadership is a concept we learned in this course that is currently trending towards improving ethical decision making by deliberately making rational decisions that maximize value rather than going with one's gut. This ties into the 4 keys of management discussed in this text, as the focus is on the employee and their potential success in a particular role. The value of making ethical decisions that save time and maximize outcome is something that is strongly included in this book. Next, creativity in leadership is becoming extremely important as fitting into a basic role is becoming outdated. The openness to trying and finding new and unique solutions is needed in employees, according to a Forbes article written by Brian, 2021. Finally, individualization is a big value for these managers in the way they approach a team because knowing each employee as an individual helps them make the best decisions. The only bias is the belief in this leadership method being the best or having the best outcome. But with this type of research and analysis done, it is leaning towards more of a factual statement as opposed to a bias. Does the organizational structure of this book promote or hinder understanding? For the most part, this textbook promotes understanding. The introduction of the book jumps right into why these managers are successful in the sense that they break all conventional rules, and then further explains how this textbook and methodology proves this. I believe a lot of the aspects of these approaches can be summed into transformational leadership, but that is never mentioned, and I really do believe that that is intentional. That may be the only act of quote unquote hindering, but that is because readers should see the variety of approaches. Does not need to be a label on the uniqueness of their methods. It does not need to be combined into one approach. I think the overall idea is very well explained in the textbook. Are the connections from the different sections of the book logical? The connections from different sections of the book serve as logical because they all feed into one another, but they also do not withhold information until the end. I really enjoyed the table of contents. I enjoyed reading this book because I knew what I was getting into from the introduction, and they all really fed well into the next one, along with giving me the information I needed in the previous sections. Is there consistency between this work and other materials on the topic? Most of the context we have learned about in this course is aligned with the overall message of this text. As I mentioned before, aspects of transformational leadership is some of the main keys to focus on as a manager. Being an empathetic leader, understanding people, is a big reason that individualization works within these teams and within these organizations. This is similar for cultural and gender norms in the workplace because these managers encourage employees to be exactly who they are, and then they build on that. Caring about the individual person and knowing who they are allows for the best connection and plan of progress, and this is a common theme in the text and in the up-and-coming leadership approaches. So as far as my recommendation for this textbook, I hope to gain perspective into the best ways to manage a team, and my expectations were exceeded. Although I could have gained a lot of valuable information from the first half of the book alone, learning in depth about the 12 areas to making a workplace better, as well as the 4 keys to being a successful manager, is a priceless insight. If you hope to gain real insight, real advice, and real evidence, this book will also contribute to your learning about leadership. This textbook gave me genuine information on how successful managers stay successful, and their answers to really complex questions that made me think past the surface level of those questions. It was an extremely informative book, and I learned more than I could have imagined. Here's my works cited page, and it has all of my references that I used for this presentation. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate any feedback that you have.